Hey, 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 Carefree Cooks. We're together once again. Welcome, everyone. So good to be together live in our Carefree Cooking community. This is our, 13th? Oh, my goodness, 13th live webinar workshop. We're going to call this one Sneaky Tasty, Strategies for Flavorful Liquids. Now, I've seen so many great stocks, broths, things like that on our group, on our community lately, that I thought maybe we could go a little deeper into this and see how we can make it even more exciting. Before we get started, let me remind you again, and especially with all the new people that are joining our community on a seems daily basis, we have a treasure trove of past Tuesday technique videos and these past live webinar workshops, 12 of them before this one. If you go to the Carefree Cooks community page, under that news and updates post there, the very first thing, we call it the sticky post in Facebook terms because it sticks to the top of the page, where it says news and updates. This one, click here frequently. And you notice on the bottom it says continue reading. And if you click continue reading, you get this tremendously long scroll that has gotten longer and longer over the past 18 months or so. And you can see in here all the past webinar workshops, along with the action plans that you can download and watch any of them at any time that you would like and look back on those things. So there's a wealth of information in there above and beyond the 48 weeks in web cooking classes. Then you get involved with the Carefree Cooks community, and then you have all these other things, all these other resources for you. And this was a promise that I made to everybody 18 months or so ago, that we would get together, do these live events, that we would do weekly short videos. Of course, you know all the benefits we have, the Monday What Am I, the Tuesday Technique, the Wednesday Member Spotlight, the Thursday True or False, and the Friday Challenge. And of course, we know the challenge is to challenge yourself, not against other community members. So, and that, that kind of attitude, that kind of culture brings me to my main thought. Whenever I log on to Facebook, and I know you do too, and you come to this warm, inviting, encouraging, empowering, inspiring group, it's just such a great place to be, isn't it? It's turned out so much better than I ever imagined. So I want to thank you for it, because you are the ones that create that culture. You're the ones that play nice and get along. We have no politics. We have no people screaming at each other, and that's good for the internet. So welcome, everyone who is with us today. Type it, let's see, check the chat box. Here we go. Yeah, chat box is available to you to ask questions at any time. Debbie's here from Boone. Hey, Debbie. Melanie, welcome. Claudine is here. Hey, Cindy. Dave Greenlee is here. Brenda and Chili Bob is a fixture. Claudine and Joni and Cindy and Pat and Mendy and, geez, what do we have? 100 or more people in here. That's great. So if I didn't welcome you by name, because I don't want it to be just an hour of me reading people's names, if I didn't welcome you specifically, I'm welcoming you in a general way. I'm glad we're all here together today. So we're going to explore flavorful liquids a little further. You guys know how fast I can talk. I need to reel myself in sometimes. So with all those past webinars at your disposal, all the stuff that we're going to do in the future, this is just a joyous community of examining how we can get more creative with our cooking and put new techniques into it. So let's get started right away. You got your webinar guide, right? Yeah, I posted that for everyone to download their webinar guide. You can follow along on the webinar guide, because we're going to start to talk about today is there really is no replacement for skillful cooking methods. And I want to start out with that assumption and that agreement right off the bat, right? No combination of spices. People come to me all the time. What combination of this and that in my spice rack is going to make my cooking better? There's no combination of spices. There's no rare or expensive ingredient. There's no magical great sauce that's going to save a badly cooked item. So let's come to that agreement first. We're not going to set aside cooking methods for the sake of saying that if I put certain herbs and spices together, that it's going to turn a badly cooked piece of chicken into a nicely cooked piece of chicken. It's what I talk about in culinary school all the time. These first semester students, if they do get to touch the stove, which most often they don't, so maybe it's the second or third semester students, we let them touch the stove. And when I let them cook something, or, you know, just to see where they are in the hierarchy of cooking things, I say, all right, go ahead, cook me your signature dish. And they go to the spice rack and they come back with like 9 and 10 spices. And it always drives me nuts. I shake my head. I would rather see a well-cooked piece of chicken with nothing on it, or just salt and pepper, than I would some kind of mess with the cayenne and the jerk seasoning and just all the stuff that shuts down and confuses your taste buds. So no combination of any of these things is going to make you a great cook. It's the cooking methods, and we all agree on this, I know, that make you a better cook. But you know what? Once you are skilled in repeating a cooking method, once you're confident enough in your ability to repeat these reliable methods over and over again, like rote, once you can saute, once you can roast, once you can braise, once you can grill, when you're confident in smoking, when you love to pan fry, when you like to steam, or maybe you like to poach, that's when you can start concentrating on the herbs and spices. That's when you can concentrate on those things, because people rely too heavily on seasoning. They're too concerned about the combination of herbs and spices. And remember, there's a big difference between seasoning and flavoring. This is a basic tenet of cooking, because these things don't solve your problems immediately. Seasoning highlights the natural flavor of the item. Salt and pepper are seasonings. You put salt and pepper on a chicken breast, tastes like chicken. Maybe even tastes more like chicken, because it excites your taste buds and readies them for it and so on. But you know, if you go too far, you start flavoring. And today, that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on flavoring. Now, we've talked about seasoning before in the last webinar. It's the Carefree Cooks exclusive webinar number 5, Flavorful Impact, Developing Compound Flavors in Food. So if you're excited about what we're going to talk about today, then go back and watch webinar number 5. You can see that again in that news and update section that I showed you a minute ago. Those are creating compound flavors, trying to bring out the natural flavors in food through your good cooking skills and making chicken taste more like chicken. Today, more flavoring than seasoning. Because really, the best way to give that perfectly grilled chicken breast a new flavor is with a sauce. You know, you can dry rub it if you want. You can put all kinds of spicy things and confuse the palate with oregano and thyme and cilantro, and you know, it puts a crust on top of it that we all know when you cut into the chicken breast, you get that dry rub in kind of some bite, but the bottom of it and the middle of it are different. So really the best way to get that perfectly poached piece of salmon is poaching it in a flavorful liquid. Nothing permeates the food better than a liquid does. And imagine if you start thinking about these flavorful liquids almost as liquid herbs and spices. Think about that for a minute. Liquid herbs and spices. What if instead of shaking it on top of the thing, you could inject it in the middle somehow? Because these flavorful liquids, they're sneaky tasty. Sneaky tasty results. Flavorful liquids enable you to sneak new flavors into something that's steamed or poached or marinated, right? These moist procedures in cooking. Flavorful liquids enable you to put that barely perceptible new dimension into sauces, that where the diner goes, man, I think it's a great taste, and I think I can identify it, but I'm not really sure, but I'm enjoying it. You know, that barely perceptible dimension in sauces. Flavorful liquids are really the next step that you should be concentrating on if you're confident in your cooking methods. If your cooking methods are where you want them to be, now you should start concentrating on these compound flavors and flavorful liquids. Because once you're confident in the how to cook, then it's time to get sneaky. Yeah, let's get our sneaky on. I wish I had some funky music. It's time to get sneaky. How's everybody doing out there? Maggie's here is thanking Mendy for something. Cookies while you guys are having conversations on your own. The link to the handout. Here's the link to the webinar guide. Whoa, that's a very long link. Okay, I'll tell you what. I don't have the webinar guide. There you go. Mendy posted it. The action plan. Okay, you got that. Good. Yeah, there was a messed up link, I'm sorry, on one of the response emails, and I sent you to the cookies webinar guide by mistake. Wrong webinar guide. Yes, it's about cookies. All right, I know. I gotcha. Judy's in Balmer, too. Hey, Judy. How you doing, hon? Patty is in space. And no questions I can answer for you yet. All right, well, let's keep going, though. We were talking about sneaky flaky, sneaky tasty, flavorful liquids. Say that 10 times fast. So let's talk about some of these flavorful liquids. Get your webinar guide out. We're going to start filling in some of those boxes. The first type of flavorful liquids we're going to talk about are stocks. And a stock is a flavorful liquid. We've talked about stocks before. You can go to Web Cooking Classes lesson week 11 for the lessons on stocks. You can refer that as well. You can also go to the top of the Carefree Cooks community page, and where it says search this group, there's a box on the top right. Type in the word stock or liquid or broth or something like that, because we've had a lot of people posting really beautiful, flavorful liquids. People are getting into this more and more, that they're posting, they're infusing more flavors into liquid. I've seen a lot of these posts. So if you go back and search search on the Carefree Cooks community in the search box and type in stock or soup or sauce or something like that, you'll get all those things that were done in the past. So a stock is a flavorful liquid. And a good stock is really the key to a great sauce, a great soup, even braised items. Imagine the compound flavors you put in when you use a stock or a flavorful liquid as a braising liquid as well. That's a whole nother dimension of things. And really, there are several types of stocks that we're going to fill in that webinar guide today, but they all come from the same ingredients. And here, let's start filling in the blanks. The basic 4 ingredients in every stock are bones, vegetables or mirepoix, seasonings, and liquid, or liquid and seasonings if you'd like. Every stock uses specific procedures that gets their different characteristics. So it's the same ingredients done again and again, but it's how you do them that creates a different environment, a different outcome. So the first box we're going to fill in has to do with a white stock. And a white stock usually has to do with simmering chicken, veal, beef bones in water, and vegetables with seasonings. They're not browned first. They're not cooked first. This is all raw stuff that goes in cold water. This is an important thing and a mistake people make quite often. Your stocks must start in cold water, because if you add hot water, and I've seen people do this in culinary school too, hey, chef, you're going to heat the whole thing up anyway. Why not start with some hot water and save you some time? If you start a stock in hot water, all the impurities, all those coagulating blood, vein, fatty, gelatinous stuff comes out first. We want that cold water to tighten it up. Like, think about jumping in a cold pool. All your muscles tighten up. You're very tense about this. You're very tight. And then the water gets warmer and you slowly release. A cloudy stock comes from hot water. A clearer stock comes from cold water. So always start in cold water. And these white stocks, they're relatively colorless. You know, they might look a little yellow from the chicken, or just slightly tinged brown from beef, but they should be relatively colorless. And the best bones for a white stock, a chicken stock, are from the back and the neck. These are the ones that are highest in collagen. This is why you can't make chicken stock, or at least it's more difficult to make chicken stock from wings and legs. Those are very small bones. They're very thin, small bones. There's not a lot of gelatin, and not a lot of gelatin to be had. There's not a lot of collagen in them. This is why you can't make a stock from just chicken meat. I've had people send me emails over the years, and, you know, I used all this chicken breast. I had all this chicken breast and I simmered it in liquid. And why don't I have a chicken stock that's gelatinous? Because there's no collagen in the meat. The collagen is in the bones, The bones with the highest amount of collagen are the neck and the back. So now this is a white stock, and actually to what happens with that, collagen in the bones through moisture and heat turns into gelatin, and gelatin is what gives you that jiggly wiggly stock. Somebody posted recently, I don't know if it was Claudine or not, a really nice, or Melanie, a really nice jiggly wiggly stock that we saw in the group the other day. That was perfect. So it doesn't have to be white. You can also alter the color of the stock with the type of mirepoix that you use. So if you put more carrots in your mirepoix, you're going to have a much brighter stock. It doesn't turn orange, but it has kind of a, I don't want to say a reflective quality to it, but it's brighter. It's again, almost imperceptible. Add some celery to your stock. It'll give it a little greener look. Add onion skins and you get a darker look. If you want a really white stock, then you can try a mirepoix of onion, parsnips, mushrooms, and leeks. There's such thing as a white mirepoix. Use only white vegetables and you'll have a whiter stock. Onion, parsnip, mushrooms, and the white part of leek. So now the second box that we're going to go to on your webinar guide says brown stock. So let's move on to that. A brown stock is made from chicken, veal, beef, or game bones. Now, people always think that a brown stock has to be beef. It doesn't have to be beef. You can actually make a brown stock out of chicken. You can make a brown stock out of ham. But the difference is that all of these items are caramelized before simmering in the water with the seasonings. They go in the oven. You brown these items any way that you can. You can brown them on the grill if you want, or just roast them in the oven for a while. This answers the question when people always ask me, I bought a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store. Can I make a stock out of it? Yes, you can make a stock out of the bones of items that are cooked in a dry fashion, and it will give color to your stock. You cannot make a stock, and this was a question in the community this week or last week. You cannot try and make a stock out of bones that were cooked in moisture because you've already turned that collagen into gelatin. Now, there is a thing called a remoulage. Remoulage is a re-wetted stock. So if you make stock out of the bones, you can fill it up with water, try and make another stock. But I'm telling you, you can compare the two. It's not going to be as jiggly. It's not going to be as gelatinous. So you can remoulage, you can re-wet, but usually what it is a dry cooking method that caramelizes the bones, and this gives you a stock that has a much deeper, richer color. It should have a rich, dark color. And browned bones and often tomato paste give color to dark stocks. Now, people make mistakes often with the tomato paste because just barely a teaspoon or so, or a tablespoon in a 5-gallon bucket is going to give you the color, but you don't want your stock to taste like tomato sauce. There's actually a procedure in French culinary. It's called émissé. Émissé, what you do is you coat the bones with tomato paste and then roast them together. I'm not crazy about this process because you're also roasting the tomato paste. And to me, to coat all the bones that you have to have enough bones to make a good stock. So if you coat them all in tomato paste, you are going to have a tomato tasting sauce. This was something they forced me to teach, forced me to teach in culinary school. And I really didn't like teaching it because I always thought you could put tomato paste in at the end. No? It's going to simmer for hours. What's the difference? So it's a very French, snotty culinary thing to coat your bones in tomato paste. You can if you want. It will add more color, but I think it'll also add a tomato flavor. I'd rather add tomato later, or even add a skinned tomato to your mirepoix, put it in the oven and char that tomato a little bit. That'll give you color. Just like chicken stock, the best bones for beef and veal stock, they come from younger animals with a higher percentage of collagen and connective tissue. The backs, the necks, and the younger animals before this collagen and connective tissue starts to deteriorate. Anyone who's older that has had back problems or knee problems or joint problems knows that as you get older, the collagen, the cushioning part between your joints dries out and stiffens. This happens in animals as well. So it's actually harder to make stock, a jiggly stock, from an older animal than it is from a younger animal. And this connective tissue in beef bones and veal bones, it's very high in collagen. And again, collagen is the protein that dissolves when it's cooked in moisture. Collagen converts into gelatin and water. And gelatin is this tasteless, odorless, jelly-like substance that you can use as a thickener. Gelatin adds richness. It adds body to the finished stock. Gelatin gives you that great mouth feel on your tongue when you have a really nice stock. And the best veal and beef bones, again, are from the back, the neck, and the shank. This is a difference between chicken and beef here. The shank bone, the leg bone in cows, in pigs, in veal is very high in collagen as well. But chicken legs aren't. There are some gelatin to be had in there, but if you get an equal quantity of both of them, you'll see a difference of them. But the beef bones usually need to be cut into pieces to increase the surface area as much as possible. Increase the surface area, get more collagen exposed, expose it to more moisture. It gives you more gelatin, and it gives you as much flavor as possible. All right, we following along so far? I'm looking at the chat box. Boy, you people with the outline, I posted it a bunch of times, and it is you wait until the very last minute. I understand. I procrastinate as well. Maggie is asking me, can you have too many bones? The only way that you can have too many bones in a stock, Maggie, is if they protrude out of the water. So no, you can't have too many bones, but the amount of bones that you have should be just covered with water. So anytime that you make a stock, all your ingredients go into the stock pot, and you only add enough water to cover those ingredients. Now, the more bones and the more shank or high collagen bones you have, yeah, the more jiggly your stock will have. We had a demonstration in culinary school one time where a butcher came in and broke down a whole side of beef. We had so many beef bones, and we cut them into 3-4 inch pieces, and they were all shank bones that I used. We made this stock in culinary school, put it in the refrigerator, and the next day we had to like scoop it with an ice cream scoop. They were so high in collagen. You could form them like snowballs almost. You could bounce them off the table. The stock was so rich in it. So no, you can't have too many bones as long as they don't come falling out of the stock. You can always take a gelatinous stock and thin it down, but it's hard to take a very thin broth and thicken it with gelatin, is what I would say. So good question. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about vegetable stock. Now, of course, there's no collagen in vegetables, right? Vegetable stocks are always going to be thinner than protein-based stocks. And there are many ingredients that can contribute to the color in vegetable stocks. It's the same way we talked about with the mirepoix on your poultry stocks. The color is dictated by the ingredients. So if you put too much green in, you're going to have a green stock. I made this mistake once. Early on in my career, I took too literally what the chef was telling me. The chef tells me, Todd, you plebe, you low man on the totem pole, save all the scraps of all the vegetables, all the things that you cut, and then you turn them into a stock. Well, in that particular week or those particular 2 days, for some reason, we were serving a lot of broccoli, a lot of asparagus, a lot of celery we had, and I had all this asparagus, broccoli, celery stems, not many onions, not many carrots, and you get where this is going probably. I've tried to make a stock out of purely broccoli, asparagus, and celery, and I had a stock that would be appropriate for St. Patty's Day. It was a bright green stock, so a balance of the colors is important as well. Look, I'm not going to review all the steps for making stocks today. Go to Web Cooking Classes week 11 for that. Today, what I really want to do is give you new ideas for being sneaky with your flavor, because Flavorful Liquids, it goes well beyond protein-based stocks. It goes well beyond chicken and beef. You can think about fish stocks as well. Fish stocks you make by slowly cooking fish bones or crustacean shells and vegetables, but you're not coloring them. There's no such thing as roasting the fish bones first. There's no such thing as roasting shrimp shells first. You really need the very little bit of collagen that they have in there to be raw. The best bones for making a fish stock are from lean white fish. Things like sole, flounder, tilapia, turbo, bass, things like that. Bones from fatty fish like tuna or salmon or swordfish, they don't make good stocks because of the high fat content. Their skin, you can see the difference between the skin of a flounder and the skin of a swordfish. It's just, and in between, imagine grilling both. Excuse me, anyone that's grilled a swordfish steak has seen the fat between the muscle fibers of the white fat, or a piece of salmon. If you overcook a piece of salmon, you've got all these dots of white fat all over it, right? Well, these are much fattier fish. They don't make very good stocks, and they also have very distinctive flavors. A salmon stock is going to smell and taste very fishy, where a stock made with like flounder will have a much more mild flavor, a much more mild smell as well. Fish carcasses, if you're going to make a fish stock, should always be cut up into pieces. You want as much surface area as you can. You always want to wash these things also. There are so many impurities in fish. You don't need all those guts. You don't need all that blood. You want your fish stock to be a clean white thing as well, started in cold water. Ron is asking me, you start in cold water also? Yes. All stocks start in cold water. There's no doubt about it. So wash all these fish pieces as well. Now, here's one of the new ideas that you might not have heard of that I can bring to you today, is a fish fumet. Now, a fish fumet is almost like a cheating fish stock. It's a shortcut fish stock. A fumet is made over a really short period of time with wine and lemon juice that are added to it. It uses a highly acidic flavor to it. Fish stock and fish fumet, they're very strongly flavored, but they're relatively colorless. The difference is fish stock you would use in a soup. Fish stock you could drink. Fish fumet, no. No, you don't drink fish fumet, and boy, you do not want to make a soup out of fish fumet because it's supposed to be very lemony. It's supposed to be very winey, very acidic, because you use it as a poaching liquid, okay? We don't eat this as a sauce. Some of you might know the difference. When you're early on in saute, early on in your career of learning how to saute, and step 1, pan hot, step 2, some kind of fat, step 3, fat hot, protein products, 75% first side, up to 25% the second side, aromatics, you get to that deglaze part. You fill the pan up with wine, like a 1/4 inch of wine, and you get impatient for it to reduce. So you got a 1/4 inch of wine and you just start making your sauce. Well, you wind up with a sauce that's very kind of tart and bitter. You've made a sauce out of wine. And I've seen these questions in the group in the last few weeks as well. In saute, the wine evaporates almost completely. Then you add a chicken broth or a beef broth to make your sauce. You don't make a sauce out of wine. And the same thing is true for fish fumet. This is used strictly as a steaming or poaching liquid, not a sauce. But it's fun to play with. It's fun to take your shrimp shells, simmer them in liquid with a whole bunch of lemon peels, a bunch of white wine. You can put a little bit of vinegar in there. If you have Asian fish sauce, that's acidic as well. Put that in there. Make a really acidic liquid, and then use it to steam or poach another piece of fish. It puts an interesting flavor on it. Again, don't drink the fish fumet afterward. Right? Here's another idea for you. When we start to talk about using vegetables and herbs and so on, it's called a court bouillon. Court bouillon is made by simmering vegetables and seasonings in water, okay? No bones, no protein, but what if you had a whole mess of basil stems from your garden? What if you had a huge harvest? What about that thyme bush, that takes over your garden? Nothing grows like thyme does. Well, you have all these things. You can make an herb stock, right? But again, just like the fish fumet, you're going to simmer these things in water plus a lot of acid. You want it to be flavorful, very aggressively flavorful, citruses, wine, lemon peels, lime peels, orange peels, along with all these herbs. It's kind of like making an herb fumet. I just told you about fish fumet. Well, think of court bouillon as a herb fumet. Drink it. It's used as a poaching liquid for fish or vegetables. Imagine making a really nice lemony basil dill. Oh my goodness, what if you had a whole bunch of dill and dill stems and made a court bouillon of lemon and dill and then poached or steamed salmon in it? Steamed salmon in a lemon dill liquid. I mean, that's got to be good, right? I would think so. So again, we use it for poaching. We don't drink it. I mean, heck, if you have that many, herbs left over, soak them in alcohol. You can make perfume as well. Court bouillon is the same kind of way that perfumers start. So from there, you start thinking about infusing flavors into just about any kind of liquid, right? Well, I know how to do it with bones. I know about mirepoix and vegetables. I know how to make vegetable stock. Now I'm getting an idea how to make a stock that I wouldn't necessarily drink, but just to use once to steam something like a fish fumet or a court bouillon. Well, how do you expand on that? How do you take just about any liquid and almost anything else and flavor the liquid with it? These are the ideas for getting sneaky tasty, right? These are the ideas for getting sneaky tasty with your flavorful liquids, taking the principles of stock making and creating compound flavors and liquids, right? I've shown you in web cooking classes, week 12, about the onion piqué. You can macerate onion or garlic into milk before you make a sauce. You take an onion, you poke it with a bunch of cloves, you put a bay leaf in it, you simmer it in the milk for a while, you throw the thing away, you're macerating. Remember the difference between marinate and macerate. That's web cooking classes week 34, if I remember correctly. So you're macerating flavors into the milk like making tea. You throw away this onion as if it were the tea bag and you've made your tea. But what else could you do? What if you were making an orange chicken dish? Say you want to make orange chicken and you've got some orange juice. What if you simmered ginger in the orange juice? If you use ginger, you peel the ginger first, right? You get rid of the skins. That can certainly wind up in the trash. Or you could save it in the freezer and simmer it in the orange juice, and you're putting that ginger flavor into your orange juice. What if you wanted to make a spicy soy sauce for your sauteed fish? What if you started thinking about simmering soy sauce and wasabi powder together? Get some of that Japanese wasabi powder and simmer it in your soy sauce, or just some horseradish or horseradish root, or cilantro, or what if you took soy sauce and simmered green onion in it? You get the idea. People don't have to crunch on green onion in your food when you're cooking it. They can just get the hint of green onion because you created a flavorful liquid from your soy sauce. I mentioned it before. What about making a really nice dill court bouillon for poaching salmon? I mean, here's somebody that made a court bouillon. I hope that they put all these vegetables in first and season the liquid and then put the salmon in there as well. But look at that picture with all those onions, that celery. I mean, that's a really flavorful liquid that's going to help that salmon to take on that flavor. Remember early on, I said, if you think about these flavorful liquids as liquid herbs, it opens up a whole new world to you. Everybody's very quick to sprinkle dry rubs, dry spices on food, but they don't ever really think about seasoning the liquid via the seasoning. What if you started simmering lemon peels in white wine with some peppercorns and some parsley or dill or something, and make this for your shrimp scampi? Right? This is something that you can poach or steam shrimp in, and it becomes shrimp scampi. So the shrimp are lemony. Now just add the butter. I mean, could you create a jalapeno court bouillon for your Mexican chicken? You want to make a Mexican sauce? How about taking chicken broth and simmering jalapenos in it? Strain the jalapenos out. You get the heat from it, but nobody has to eat a jalapeno. You get the idea. When you start compounding flavors, that's the hocus pocus of cooking. That's when people start asking you, how did you do this? This tastes so much different than if I just put onions in it or onion powder in it. You might even think about double flavoring or double stocking items. Now think about this. Double stock gets me really excited. If you simmer whole grain mustard in a beef stock, you get a new compound flavor. So you start simmering condiments in stock. You've already made a flavorful liquid in a stock. If you simmer whole grain mustard in a beef stock, well, whole grain mustard is also a thickening agent. So it's going to change the texture of the stock as well. What if you caramelized onions in your chicken stock? Make a white chicken stock, caramelize onions, simmer and reduce the chicken stock, and you've got much more complexity of flavors. Double stocking, when you get into this idea of compound flavor on top of compound flavor on top of compound flavor, this is what they do in the most expensive restaurants. There's a sauce guy that spends all day long simmering things, reducing things. Well, when you get down this path, you start talking about demi-glace. And let's talk about the difference between a glacé and a demi-glace. And this is real advanced culinary school stuff because people study their whole lives making these kind of things. So a glacé is a drastically reduced and concentrated stock. Witnessed by this, what it's supposed to be is that 1 gallon of stock, 1 gallon of beef stock should be reduced to 1 cup of glaze. That's outrageous, isn't it? Can you imagine taking a gallon of beef stock, letting it simmer for the length of time it would take to get it down to a cup? That's a 16-time reduction. When you're done doing that, you will have a hard cube of beef. You will have a bouncy rubber ball of beef that you can then whisk into things. I know a lot of our members in our community are starting to make roux and put them in their freezers, making white roux, blonde roux, brick roux, keeping them in their freezer to quickly thicken liquids. Well, imagine if you went this far. You made a good gelatinous stock, treated it so delicately and gently with the heat that you could reduce it 16 times and come up with a cup of liquid. Can you imagine the intensity of flavor that just a dash of that would bring to your cooking? Well, not everybody has all the time in the world to reduce their gallon of beef stock down to a cup. So there's a thing called demi-glace or demi-glacé. Demi-glace is equal parts brown stock, brown sauce, and then reduced by half. This is a shortcut for glacé. So if you have brown stock, let's say you use half a gallon of brown stock, you add to it half a gallon of brown sauce that is beef stock thickened with a brown roux. All right. So in essence, you're taking an Espanol sauce, a brown sauce, thinning it out by half, and then reducing it back by half. It sounds one step forward, one step back, but it's a demi-glace. And what this really does is concentrate the gelatin in the stock, help it combine with the gelatin, the gelatinization of the flour, and you get something that's even more jiggly, more flavorful. Glacé will take you a full day to do. It's exciting and it's fun. You can play tennis with a nice piece of glacé, but a demi-glace doesn't take as long. So if you've made yourself a brown sauce, re-wet the brown sauce with brown stock, reduce it again, and then you can even triple glacé. You could take that, add a brown stock to it, reduce it in half, and keep going to like the nesting dolls where there's never any end to it. It's endless, the amount of flavors that you can put in your food. I mean, these are all ideas, all right? They're just ideas for putting the methods of stock making, translating them into a general idea of infusing flavors into your own liquids. Create your own liquids. I know there's milk. Everybody knows there's milk. There's chicken broth. Everybody knows there's chicken broth. But is there your special jalapeno cilantro chicken broth? No, it's uniquely yours. And that's why your dish is uniquely yours, because you take these steps to create your own ingredients that yield to something really unique. So All this stuff, it gives a whole new dimension to your sauces, your braised items, your poached items, your steamed items, your simmering items. Because when you start to hide one flavor inside another, and that's really what you're doing. You're hiding one flavor inside the other. When you can do that, you're being sneaky tasty. You have accomplished great success in doing this. You are a sneaky tasty master. You're successful. You can lay back and relax in a nice warm bath. Wait a minute. That's a little perverse right there. Wait, I got to get that off. There's something wrong with that photo. Anyway, that's the idea. Once you're confident in your cooking methods and realize that herbs and spices don't make you a great cook, the cooking methods make you a great cook, that's when you can focus on the herbs and spices. That's when you can focus on compound fats, compound butters and olive oils, compound liquids like we talked about today. When you start simmering vanilla beans in your milk or in your heavy cream to make a vanilla heavy cream, when you put vanilla beans in sugar to make vanilla sugar, when you start thinking, how can I cram one flavor inside another? That's when you're getting really creative. That's when your stuff has that unique dimension to it. And to me, that's when it's a lot more fun. Let's check the chat box. That looked like my hot tub, Gary says. Hey, you want to see it again? Here we go. There it is. While I look over the chat box, you can look back at that. Jane, how long do you cook a sauce until it's perfectly infused from the veggies and the bones? Good question, Jane. There are guidelines, of course. Anybody knows I can't give you time, and my chef answer is always until it's done. You know, when you ask me how long should I cook something, I'm always going to say until it's done. A better question is, how do I tell? So rule of thumb, beef broths, 5 to 6 hours. If you go 7 or 8, great. If you go 3 to 4, it'll be a little thinner. Chicken stocks, usually 3 to 4 hours. If you go longer, great. If you go less, you'll have a thinner stock. Fish fumet, barely an hour. Shrimp shells, barely an hour. The good thing about making stocks is you can't burn them, right? You know, the only thing you can do is evaporate completely and dry out your pan, which you wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, 5, 6 hours for beef, 3, 4 hours for chicken, an hour for fish. Steve is asking how to reduce salt in stocks. That's a really good question that I should have touched on, Steve. You don't put them in the first place. Don't ever put salt in a stock. A stock is most often used as an ingredient for a sauce or a poaching liquid. You can salt the item that you're poaching or the soup that you're making later. But because stocks are most likely an ingredient in something else, you don't ever put salt in them. And there is no natural salt in a stock, right? If you use raw chicken meat and a bunch of vegetables, there should be no salt in it. So it's one of the healthiest things you can do. You see on the internet now all the time about bone broths for gut health and things like that, as if this is a new thing. They had to make it a new word, bone broth. It's not bone broth. It's a stock, for goodness sake. Can we use marrow bones for stock like the butcher sells? Yes, those are the ones that you use. Who was asking me that? Melanie, yes, go to the butcher. They'll give them to you for cheap. Marrow is where the collagen is, and you'll get a much more jiggly stock with a more marrow. What else are we asking? Can we use marrow bones from the butcher for stock? Yes, Melanie, you can. Any more questions? How about using farm fresh bones? I live with farms around me. Yeah, the fresher the better. There's no doubt about that. If you have access to a local butcher or rancher or something like that, I'm sure they want to get rid of those bones. They probably sell them very cheaply. Yeah, the fresher the better. The younger animals, remember, the higher collagen. The more collagen, the more gelatin. Would you poach non-seafood in a fumet? Bob is asking. Yeah, vegetables for sure. If I was making a salmon dish and I was doing, asparagus or something, I would consider poaching the vegetables in a fish fumet and a very lemony or acidic wine fish fumet. I think it would complement really well. Do you start browning fish stocks cold also? Ron, I answered that question. Randy is asking, how long do stocks last? That's a really good question. The more gelatinous it is, the more gelatin, the longer it will last. A thinner stock, it can get moldy from the fat. It can turn rancid. If you just have bits and pieces, specks of fat floating around on top, that fat can turn rancid. They would go bad. Beef stock, chicken stock, within a week. Fish stock goes bad very quickly, 2 to 3 days at most. But the more gelatinous it is, the longer it will last. And with a chicken stock, here's another thing. Fat is a natural sealant. Long before they invented plastic wrap, people were coating things in fat, making pemmican. Indians put seeds and stuff in fat, or dried meats in fat. Heck, your cakes. Cakes are ancient. The reason cakes are frosted is because all that fat protects the cake underneath. As soon as you cut the cake open, it's that slice that gets stale first, right? Well, the same thing is true with stocks. If you make a chicken stock and you've got that schmaltz on the top, all the fat rises to the top of the chicken stock. If you don't disturb that fat layer, the stock will last much, much longer. As soon as you break that fat layer, you've taken a few days off. So up to a week for the most gelatinous, 2 days for fish stock is how they will last, how long they will last. Good question. Any others in here for me? Do we skim the scum that forms during simmering? Jacqueline is asking. Absolutely. Skim the scum. I used to walk around the lab at culinary school just going, skim the scum, skim the scum. Yeah. Any impurities that you can remove in the cooking process, the clearer your stock will be and the less trouble you'll have later. Don't disturb the stock, though. Don't ever stir a stock. If you're going to skim the scum, get yourself a shallow spoon and just skim, off the top of the stock as best you can. Don't ever stir. Don't disturb it. The best thing for stocks is actually a pot with a faucet on the bottom. Because where a lot of stocks are ruined is when you make this beautiful stock and then you pick the pot up and you turn it upside down into your strainer. That brings all those impurities that have fallen to the bottom and stuff. The best way to get your stock out of the stock pot is with a ladle. Is ladle by ladle, gently trying not to disturb it each time. You'll get a much clearer stock that way. So yes, skim the scum. Linda's asking me to review the worksheet answers. I don't have it in front of me, Linda. I'm sorry. I'm sure others can help you, or I can try and post it in the group. But yeah, I was just kind of moving along. I don't have it in front of me, Linda. We'll work on that later. Any thoughts on a pressure cooker to make stock? I don't know. You guys are always asking me about pressure cookers. I don't own one. I don't use them. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, a pressure cooker cuts your time down. So anything that cuts your time down, if the end result is to your liking, then I would say do it. I'd say it works great. I don't myself. I just let it simmer. It makes my house smell fantastic. If I'm going to make a stock on a Sunday afternoon, I let it go all day. House smells great, makes me hungry, tastes great. You don't get that in the pressure cooker or the sous vide stick or any of these things. I'm a purist. Tracy, are there any vegetables you would not put in a stock? Oh, wow, that's a really good question. No, I can't think of any that I wouldn't. I mean, kale is not going to make a good stock for you. Lettuce, putting something that's 90% water into water isn't going to yield much result. So I wouldn't make a lettuce stock. There's one for you. Yeah, a lot of greens, collards. Something now that I really think about it, most leafy greens I wouldn't put in a stock. They don't contribute much. I would stick with root vegetables. Root vegetables, carrots, even potatoes will give you something really starchy that you can thicken with. Parsnips, turnips, stuff like that. Most root vegetables, because of their starchiness, are the best ones for stocks. Onions, root item as well. Garlic, root item. Something, now that I'm thinking of it, the answer to your question is no to leafy things, yes to rooty things. I just made up a word, rooty things. All right, looking good. Michael, just vegetable stock. Since we're not trying to turn collagen into gelatin, vegetable stocks can go for an hour at the least. The longer you do it, the more flavor you're going to get. And that's pretty much a rule with all the stocks. The longer you do it, the more flavor you're going to get until you start to boil that pot dry. But here's the thing, don't ever add more water into your stock. You've spent hours working on this flavorful liquid, and then you're going to thin it down with more water. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So let it evaporate to a point where some of the bones are exposed or your vegetables are exposed. So longest time for beef, 5 to 6 hours, 3 to 4 hours chicken, 1 hour for fish and fish fumet, an hour to 3 hours for vegetables. Yeah, Leo, potato stock for soup. It'll be a very starchy, cloudy thing, but if you're going to make a potato soup, it's going to help with your thickening and help with your potato flavor. I think it makes a lot of sense. Dave says root vegetables are going to make it cloudy. Yeah, it will, but if you're going to make, like a puree of potato soup after that, it doesn't matter. But for sure, it's a very starchy thing. All right, cool. That's 50 minutes. Glad we were together today. I hope you got an opportunity to start thinking about how you can put compound flavors into liquids now and think about them as liquid herbs and seasonings that you can use for poaching or steaming or marinating or just drinking if you want, unless it's a fumet or a court bouillon. Then you don't want to drink them. Hey, thanks, everyone. Again, appreciate your time. And I so appreciate your contributions to our great community. Congratulations to you, because it's the members that make it what it is. So thank you so much for being with us today. Chef Todd Moore, wishing you great cooking success. Bye, everyone.